Good evening and welcome to Dessert and Dish. Dessert and Dish is our weekly interview segment inviting real people to dish on the real challenges and blessings of living faithful lives. We always feature a dessert, something local or homemade a lot of the time, but not always. Because in my experience, dessert makes good conversations that much better, and because we all need a little reminder of the sweetness of the kingdom of God already at work in our midst. I'm so excited this evening to welcome Deacon Lorenzo Cromwell and my co-host for this evening, Brad Barnham. Now, I'm going to say more about Brad, and especially Lorenzo is going to have lots of opportunity to share his story with us. But first of all, we do have to talk about dessert. So we're on Zoom tonight. We're not in person. That means that we have 3 different desserts to introduce. I'm super excited about my dessert, but Brad, why don't you go first? What are you eating for dessert tonight?
Okay, hi, nice to see you all over the screen as we do on Advent Cafe. My dessert today was very, it was important for the weather that we're experiencing. It's extremely hot, so I was gonna make something warm, but then I said, you know what, I'm gonna go with the season, and I have my favorite ice cream you can ever get, which is Kawartha Dairy. I'm sure you've all had it.
Yes.
Kawartha Dairy is like the top, my favorite cream of the crop.
Me too. And what kind is your favorite?
This is the bourbon. So I have 2 favorites. I have like a favorite that you have on your own, which is their moose tracks.
Yes,
that's my favorite. But this is just their, it's not just because it's my favorite. It's their vanilla bean bourbon, so vanilla, but these are farm fresh blueberries on top.
Wow.
From our local market here in Hamilton.
All right. Well, you are rocking it out of the park. That's awesome.
Yeah. Maybe sometime in the future we can just pass that kind of stuff through the screen.
I know, right? Well, it just makes me excited for when we can be in person and we can, share in one another's delicious desserts. So, Lorenzo, what about you? What have you got for dessert?
Well, I just went a short little jaunt down the street. On the corner of Clark Street and Welland is Chocolate Etc.
Yeah.
Yes, but I didn't get chocolate. I got raspberry cheesecake.
Oh, that's one of my favorites ever.
So.
Oh, and you have enough to share.
Right. I have enough for everybody.
Like a full-on cake. Wow.
That is delightful.
So whoever is over in the church vicinity tonight is lucky indeed, I would say.
Because I shouldn't eat much of it myself. So.
Well, definitely enjoy a good.
I'll have a piece. Yeah.
I'm having my ice cream because if I don't, it's going to be a mess.
Yeah. It is dessert and dish. You're supposed to eat your dessert.
Yes.
Okay, so I said I was excited about my dessert. That's because the reason why we're recording over Zoom is because I had to come to Aurelia this week to drop my kids off to start their vacation. And so my mom made dessert for tonight.
Oh.
And this is what we call in our house s'more bars. So it's made with that Golden Graham cereal and then like tons of chocolate and marshmallows all just into a gooey concoction. And so it takes me like right back to my childhood because this was my most special favorite thing that my mom would make. And she almost always makes it for me now when I come to visit because
that's awesome.
It reminds me of growing up.
What a blessing. That's wonderful.
I love that.
Oh, I know. So my mom's my dessert hero this week. So now that we have dessert introduced and we're all, feeling like we wish that we could be together so that we can all try one another's desserts. I want to make sure that we introduce our people. So Brad and Lorenzo, you're both newer to St. George's, but you are both becoming very well known across our community. Brad is usually wearing a different hat than he is tonight. He is our director of music and is usually behind the keyboard when we get to see him on screen. But I think that everybody at St. George's is beginning to get a sense of just what a faithful and thoughtful and articulate person Brad is. And how you're engaged with like the whole walk of faith, not just with the musical part. So he said that he would be my co-host tonight, and I was really glad he took me up on that. I think you thought that I was providing the dessert when you said yes, but you know.
Well, I mean, that's usually the case. And so that was a quick yes, but this is just as fun. I'll wait for the next time.
Okay.
And I'm usually behind the piano, it's right, which is why I'm behind the piano tonight too.
I kind of wondered if we have a musical interlude, you know?
Oh my gosh. I feel like Dessert and Dish needs a theme song. So like maybe you'll get inspired as we're talking.
Yes, maybe I'll give you a goodbye theme song at the end of the show. So stick around, everybody. You might get a goodbye theme song.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Lorenzo was serving as a deacon in the Anglican Church in Port Colborne, but started attending St. George's just at the outset of 2020 as he was anticipating a move to our city and just before the whole world shut down for the last year and a half. And yet, despite all of that shutdown and chaos, you were able to move to St. Catharines and you officially became licensed as a deacon in the community of St. George's late last fall. So Lorenzo, I was thinking that maybe we could start there. We could start with introducing you as a deacon because having a deacon at St. George's is a newer thing for many of the people in our community. And I think it would be great if you started off by telling us a little bit about the ministry of deacon and what it looks like.
Well, even being a very young Anglican, only going on 8 years old, being a deacon was very new to me as well, and brand new to the St. James, St. Brendan in Port Colborne as well. They had never had a deacon there. So I guess I'm continuing with that situation where, okay, I'm in a congregation where they have not had a deacon before either. So this is all good. But I think that we're going to be, you know, very shortly having more deacons in St. George's. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a team of deacons.
Wonderful.
And I've warned Martha. I said, you know what it means when you have more than one deacon? Deacons, you know, if you have a group of lions, it's called a pride of lions, right? A group of owls is a parliament. Well, a group of deacons is a disturbance. So be prepared.
I love it.
And deacons are all about social justice, you know, and working outside of the parish. And so that's primarily our work. Our work is like 80% outside of the church, into the community, wherever there are issues, wherever there's challenges, where, you know, it's where we, you know, get our hands dirty. The church gets involved. And so as a deacon, it's an exciting work because we can get out there and be with folks that are the unchurched, actually, and introduce them to Jesus and introduce them to his church and to all the wonderful benefits of being a part of a faith community. So yeah, I enjoy the opportunities of being able to be a deacon and be a part of what's going on around us. And St. George's, my goodness, a lot of social work, a lot of interaction with community happens here. And so it's a wonderful fit for deacons.
Wonderful. And I thought you and I started around the same time. Our leadership began at a similar stage. And for me, this place was filled with so much energy, working through it, working through something that as a church, as a culture we'd never faced before, and finding ways to not only survive but thrive was really intriguing to me. I came in at a time where things were, unsettled, and yet there was confidence and faith, and there was engagement, and there was a community of people making things happen. And so that was really encouraging to me, let alone the people just felt so wonderful. So for me, it was an easy, that was my connection in. What about you? What connected you to St. George's?
Well, I did know Martha and Scott prior. Because of being a deacon, you're involved with the clergy within the Anglican church. And so I did know them, and I had heard of some of the wonderful things that were going on at St. George's. And it's a downtown church. It's right in the center of the city. And so there has to be involvement with the community when you're that close. And also, my children and my grandchildren live here. So that was another pull as well, just to be closer to them. But, and the first couple of times that I visited here at St. George's, I looked around and there were a lot of friends, a lot of people that I've already known. And so it felt very comfortable and was welcomed very quickly. So it's great.
I remember seeing you on that first Sunday that you came to a service and just feeling so glad to see you. And I feel that our community is very fortunate indeed that you made that connection. And I mean, just kind of building on another thing that you said, like, when we talk about like taking the love of Jesus out into the world, like that's such a simple and such a necessary piece, right? And you can see that especially where we're located right downtown. I mean, there are so many misconceptions about the church and maybe mixed messages about the church, and at the end of the day, like what we need to simply communicate is love and care and concern for our neighbors. Like and I feel like if the disturbance of deacons just keeps holding our feet to that flame, like can't get too far off track, right? No. Like,
well, as a matter of fact, it was
work. Thursday
night there was the barbecue here, and I decided I'd just come over and see what it was all about. And the breakfast program starts awfully early for Lorenzo, and it's like 6:37 a.m. That's kind of early for me. But the barbecue that in the evening, that works. So I came over, and the line of people waiting for hamburgers and their supper, and they were all different, from different backgrounds. They, yes, some, appeared to be, in difficult situation in their lives, but not all. And we have some tremendous, people that work here as well. We have a security person by the name of Adam, and he was there and was so friendly and kind and generous to everybody, grabbing water bottles and assisting people, making sure that they, got their firsts before others got their seconds. And he was introducing me to people. It really felt like they were like a family. They didn't know each other. And it was nice to get to know them as well. So it's things like that really encourage me and make me feel this is a wonderful place to be and be a part of the challenge that's going on around us.
I really like that word, family, just in terms of widening the scope of what that means. And yeah, that's really, really beautiful. So today is the last day of June, and the final day of Pride Month. As with a lot of things, there hasn't been the same opportunity this year to draw attention to the value and worth of the voices from LGBTQ2+ community because of COVID. So that has shut down a lot of the celebrations that we would normally see over the course of June. But tonight we really wanted to use this platform to hear you, Lorenzo, share with us something of your story and your witness. And I thought that we would start in a more general way, kind of widen our scope outside of the church to start with, to look at the culture in which we live as a whole. Because, I mean, really, Pride Month has had to make tremendous inroads into our culture as a whole, let alone the church. I grew up primarily in the 80s and 90s. I grew up in a small rural town in Ontario. And I did not see any gay people represented whatsoever. There were no openly out gay people in our community. There were certainly no out people in our high school. It just wasn't a voice, a story, a witness that you ever heard in Hanover in the 1980s and 1990s. That wasn't that long ago, right? So I'm wondering, Lorenzo, if you can just kind of share with us a little bit about the messages around sexual orientation that you saw and heard growing up and how that impacted you.
Well, I was several decades prior to you, 60s and 70s. And, you know, the wild hippie times. And although there seemed to be a lot of freedom happening in the culture around us, still it was very closed when it came to people's sexual orientation. In high school, definitely that was never spoken of. I mean, that was, and there didn't seem to be anyone out there that you could look at and say, well, this is a person that is of that lifestyle. It's really interesting that, and many people are not aware of it, of the reason why we have Pride Month in June. Yeah, and the reason is because on the 28th of June, back in 1969, Stonewall happened. And that what happened was at a inn, the Stonewall Inn, which was a bar establishment and so forth, where a lot of gay and lesbian people would have a place to hang out, get to know each other. It was raided. And it had been raided a few times, but this last time, on the 28th of June, they fought back. And they said, enough. We're not going to be, you know, taken and thrown into the back of a cruiser again and taken down to a jail cell just for being who we are. And so they fought back. And some of the most vocal individuals were those who were the drag queens. They were very loud. They were, you know, to the point where they were even throwing rocks at the police. And yes, they found themselves in jail cells. But that was the beginning of a whole movement, which today we see has changed into something that's worldwide, where, you know, we're not going to put up with that anymore. People, you know, people are people. They are allowed to love who they wish to love, as long as no harm is being done. So for me growing up, there were, you know, no characters, no individuals on the TV screen or newspapers or whatever that I could look up to as a role model. There didn't seem to be anybody there. And so you grow up feeling very alone. You feel like you're the only person with that problem. And the teaching of the church was very plain in that it would state that you were an abomination. Oh, we got some.
No, it's causing
reverberation here. You where was it? Oh yeah. So there was a situation where, you know, the church told you that you were an abomination, that God hated you, and the major thing that was spoken of is how this was your choice. You had chosen to be gay, and like at 7 years of age, I knew. I knew that I was not interested in girls, and it wasn't just a passing thing, because a lot of boys were not all that interested in girls at 7 years of age. But I could tell that there was a difference, and the attraction was definitely there. And a 7-year-old does not make that choice.
Yeah.
And so throughout my life, I had to live with fear that, oh, somebody may find out that this is the way I feel. There are 6 clobber passages in the Bible that people will use against you. 2 of them in Leviticus, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9, 1 Timothy. There are a number of passages that people, Romans chapter 1, that they use. And it's all passages that have been taken totally out of context. The situation with Sodom and Gomorrah, that was, we should have maybe even put a trigger on this, that people be cautious when listening. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was just a situation of gang rape for power. It had nothing to do with sexuality at all. So over and over again, we find all of these things mounted up, you know, within the church and within the community. And so it was something that was very hurtful. And so you live, in essence, a lie. You live as if, you know, you're following what everyone else does. You're straight. And so did I, to the point where you marry, you have children, you follow what society says. And for 13 years, I went with a program called New Directions, which was an organization that was connected to Exodus International, which was an ex-gay organization where they did reparative therapy, conversion therapy, which just recently has been voted down as anything that anyone can use in Canada now. So I'm very thankful for that, because I did I did know of friends who committed suicide because of it.
Gosh.
Wow.
So, very painful times. I wouldn't speak up even in the 70s and 80s, because you could be thrown into a hospital and they would use electrotherapy on you to attempt to change you.
Oh my gosh.
So no one spoke about it, because either you're thrown in jail or thrown into a hospital as a person who has a mental disability. So all of this, and then you have compacted on top of that what your church is telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so growing up, it was difficult. It there wasn't any time when I could see someone portraying a good image of someone who was gay. On TV and so forth, they were always the buffoon. They were always the funny person, not to be taken serious.
It's interesting to witness the shift between time periods. So I would have been in a different time period going to high school than maybe either of you, and yet the way I was thinking about how I would describe how being out and being open and honest was perceived during my time in high school. I was in high school. I graduated in 2010, so like early 2000s, right? And we think we're getting there. We're getting to a place where we are accepting and celebrating people's honest story, and yet I think back, and what I can safely say is the way that it was depicted was in apathy. There was this lack of care for what other people were going through, because the awareness was there that there were people that were feeling things and loving and having these experiences, where they felt honored by what they were doing for themselves, and yet nobody else talked about it. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was talking about the people that we knew that were going through these hard times. And if you were gay, you didn't say it. It just wasn't. And that to me, that is no progress. That's no progress. That is still that is apathy and fear of moving and shaking things a little bit. And so I was fortunate, growing up in the United Church, which is a very accepting community, as you might know. And I've always, I've never felt, there's never been that sort of that direct defilement of the church. I never grew up in that space where, like, if I had, which I did, lots of kind gay friends, that wasn't a sin in the way I grew up. But I think that might be different for others. And Lorenzo, I know that your ministry is seriously informed by a lot of those destructive messages that you receive about your sexual orientation. And I'm just wondering if there's any story that you might want to share with us on that story, on how you got from where you were and the experiences that you had to where you are now.
Well, after going through reparative therapy and finding that it just wasn't working, that there was no changes, you can't pray the gay away.
You can't.
As a matter of fact, right from the time I was a child, I recall, many times, just rolling over towards the wall and crying and saying, "God, please change me." And, that's not an unknown story. So many other LGBTQ plus people have done the same thing. So it's not a case of, I've chosen this. Why would you choose? You would not choose that. And the changes for me came when I was finally able to disconnect myself from what the church had over and over again told me what to believe, how to believe, and how to interpret these Bible passages. And once I really started examining it and examining the interpretation of a passage from its original source, whether it be in Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and really examining what it actually said, did I find that the English translations were wrong. And the interesting thing is, and a lot of people are not aware of this, it wasn't until 1946 that the word homosexual was introduced to the Bible. It didn't exist there prior to that. And it was in the Revised Standard Version that it was first introduced in 1946. And you'll notice in the new Revised Standard Version, it's been taken out. And that was because a seminarian contacted the translators and the chair of the translators and said, why have you made this translation? It's an error. And he stated, he said, this could be used as a spiritual weapon. And it has. And what happened from that point on, many other translations, such as the New International Version, the New King James, the English Bible, many of them have used the word homosexual, especially in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9, where it says, you know, they will not enter the kingdom of heaven. How painful is that? And that's not, that word does not exist there. And so it really, Brad, what it was I had to, you know, disassociate myself from what I've been taught and really had to re-examine things. And then finally seeing the truth of it all. And it's amazing. There is a passage in the Bible, in Matthew chapter 19, near the end of the chapter, Jesus, well, in the beginning of the chapter, Jesus is talking about marriage. One man, one woman, okay? And how hurtful divorce is. Yeah, because it leaves someone destitute, and that's why it's so hurtful. And then below that, he begins to talk about non-binary individuals. And he uses the word eunuch, but that's what a eunuch was, a person who was non-binary, neither male nor female, who didn't fit into the understanding of that sexual orientation that was around. So Jesus said, some were born that way. And that did it for me.
Wow. Wow.
That made the major change for me when Jesus said, some are born that way. He said it before Lady Gaga, by the way. So that was just the spark that really helped me go and examine more. And there's a lot of books and materials out there today that can help gay Christians. Matthew Vine is a tremendous writer who's written a book concerning the gay Christian. And so we've come a long ways, and we're able to now speak with some authority and some strength and say, no, I'm sorry, but what you've been taught has been hurtful and wrong and painful. But I am so thankful that the Anglican Church and the United Church and so many others are seeing that there is error in some of the past translations. And we can go ahead and rejoice in the beauty of the diversity of people. And that's really what the rainbow is all about. You know, it's diversity. It's people of all different sorts. You walk through a garden, do you want all the flowers to be yellow?
Oh, that's nice.
That's kind of boring. So, you know, you need differences.
Yeah.
And how beautiful that is.
Yeah. I think that's so beautiful, Lorenzo. And, you know, there are a couple of things that I just want to pick up on that you just shared. And I mean, my experience of growing up in the church was actually like in complete contrast to growing up in the town of Hanover. Like, it was through the teachings of Jesus that I really questioned what I heard everywhere else about what it meant to be gay. It was through the teachings of Jesus that I believed in gay rights, and that I thought that maybe the town of Hanover had it wrong.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I think that there is such a an unfortunate debate that kind of gets framed in the church around whether you're a Bible believing Christian or not, and that somehow that comes down to then what you believe about human sexuality. And what you've actually said is it was in a much more careful reading of scripture and a much more prayerful engagement with the word of God that that you were able to break free from messages that it sounds like the predominant themes of what you received about yourself were loneliness and shame.
Shame is a big word. And see that what's the difference or the opposite of shame? Pride.
Pride.
Right.
And so that's where this has really birthed itself from. It's because we've had to live through a constant shame. I think what's happened too is that people have been a bit lazy when it came to, very quickly labeling others and saying, well, you're gay, therefore you're sinful. They didn't do their due diligence in research. And I have to say, I fault a lot of ministers and priests and so forth who really didn't study, just said, well, that's what the church says, and didn't really look into it and probably didn't know any gay people in their community either, or
didn't know that
were
they
aware
knew.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably more likely.
Yeah. So, but it takes work. And if you are too lazy to do the work, I'm sorry, then, you're just going to accept what your church as a whole says and what others have said and go along with it. But anyone who really takes the time to check it out, they'll see that it's been used as a spiritual weapon against very innocent individuals who had no choice in being who they are and loving who they do. So, I'm so glad that we live in a time right now when we can see the acceptance, the love going forth from church to the to SLGBTQIA community. It's been a long, hard road. And for those of us who are older, I'm afraid it's not over, because many of us are concerned about when we go into extended care, when we go into a nursing home, what's it going to be like there, where we will be put, living among people our same age group that never accepted and will not accept, or even having to over and over again come out to health providers and so forth, and letting them know who we are and why, the visitor that we have every week is the same sex, or that we have a husband rather than a wife. It is something that we're still working at, and it's going to be something we'll work on throughout our generation.
I mean, you really have been, you have really paved the way. And I do look at your generation and how you've paved the way. And I am struck by the personal cost that you have taken on to do that. And, I hope that within those difficulties that you continue to have to navigate, that there is hope and some sense of joy in knowing that you are making things better for those who come after you in a big way. I mean, for my generation, for Brad's generation, for the generation of my kids, it makes I can't believe how much I've seen the envelope move just in my lifetime. And it's because of people like you.
Well, see, I just came out recent. 2012. So actually, I'm a young gay, and I don't understand it all yet. I'm trying to understand the community better. And many times there are surprises for me. But I think the difficult thing for older people within the 2S LGBTQIA community, the difficulty is we look at teenagers today, or people, young people who are dating, and we go, we didn't have that. We missed that. We never had the opportunity to have, a young love. And so, it becomes both a joy for what we see, but in the same breath, it becomes a hurt.
Yeah.
Because of what we didn't realize. And even within the gay community, there is a bit of a division between the older and the younger. The older put on the shelf, they're not of as much value. At least that's what it's seen sometimes in the community. And the youth is important. And that's part of our culture, isn't it? We're very youth oriented. But I think that more and more people are telling the stories of like Stonewall, of what happened in Toronto, about those who in the 1980s, which isn't all that long ago, were arrested here in St. Catharines for being gay.
Yeah, Aurelia too.
Yeah. So, we just need to speak up. We need to let it be known that that these things were done to help the youth of today, that they can grow up in a world. I pray that the day comes when we don't even discuss, the rainbow, the letters. You don't have to know the letters, like, because they really won't matter. Mm-hmm. Because we'll be, just people who are able to love who we wish to love, and to, have an affection, have an attraction towards whoever we see that shows forth the love back at us.
Yeah. And so it's you've experienced lots of hardship, and you've experienced lots of conflict inner and outer, and now we find yourself today. And how do you define your ministry? What's your role? And I know it's something, it's impactful, and I just would love to hear in your words, what is your role in the church?
My role is to take the hand of the hurt, those who have been disenfranchised, and walk them back place their hand in Jesus's. Just so that they can again, feel the love of Christ and feel the love of his church. One by one, bring them back to church, bring them back to Christ. That's what I see my work as. And it's situations such as this podcast, this tonight, that helps. Another one that I did recently with the city of Niagara Falls. And we had individuals who called in and asked for assistance. And I would love people to just contact us. Let us know that this is something that maybe you're struggling with, or you have a family member that's having difficulty, or you have a child who's talking about transitioning. So, let us be a help to bring people back to Christ, back to Jesus. because he's never left.
Yeah.
It's, God, and that's the way I've never felt in my whole life. I ever felt like God ever left me.
Wow.
Wow.
Through it all, never felt that. I felt like God was there and God was loving and attentive. But I felt like I was the sinner and needed to change. But now I recognize that, it's almost like that poem that so many people use, footsteps in the sand. Yeah, God has always been with me. Jesus has always, been at my side and assisted me through this. So I haven't felt alone. There are lonely moments, but I haven't felt totally set off from the church, separated from the church. And so, Brad, yeah, my work is to just bring them back.
That's pretty.
Bring them back. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty full circle, right? Sorry.
Yeah. No. That's exactly what I was going to say. There's when you say bring them back, it assumes that they've been there before, and you're circling back, and your arms are loving and surrounding those who need it, and that's so beautiful. And I think in light of Pride Month, there's some serious connections here, and I would just love to hear your thoughts on what pride is to you, the word, but also the month. But what does it mean to you, and why is it, we've spoken a little bit about it, but if you were to just put it into an idea, why is it important for you, but also for us all?
Being able to set aside the shame. Being able to say, I am who I am, and God has created me this way, and I'm beautiful in His sight. We are all beautiful in God's sight. We're all His children. And so I can take pride in that. I've had people say, well, why pride? Why have a month designated for this? Well, the reason is because still there are times when people are ostracized or set apart because they show forth affection towards someone of their same sex or whatever orientation they may be. We wouldn't have to have a Pride Month if this was fully recognized. But we will continue to have this pride. We have to show forth that we're proud. Isn't it wonderful that we have a group called Proud Anglicans?
Yeah.
And I would love to see more of that happening in Niagara. I know that that's happening in the Toronto area. But it's knowing the history of the LGBT people, the spiritual history of the LGBT folks. I mean, there's a large, wonderful spiritual history that we haven't even tapped on this evening concerning, shamans and two-spirit and individuals. There are a number of people that have went into ministry, became priests and ministers who were members of the LGBT community, and because they could feel a compassion for people. One of the things that I find over and over again with people of the LGBT community is they seem to be bridge builders. Because of what they've had to overcome, they're able to assist others to also overcome. Right. Beautiful. And so the Russian shamans, bridge builders, the ancient indigenous peoples who, by the way, every single village had a two-spirit person before the settlers came. Every village, there was a two-spirit individual who was seen as the teacher, as a spiritual person, and also the teacher of the children. And so there's a very large spiritual history as well that needs to be spoken of and brought into the open. And I think that we can do that as the church as well. We can show that there's been a number of people. Hey, you can't go through a hymn book without singing a song that's been written by an LGBT person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think so much of what you're describing is diaconal, right? Like so much of that bridge building ministry, that diaconal ministry. And, you know, I just get a chill in a good way, thinking about how clearly you articulate your ministry to simply like go out and welcome people back to the love of Christ. And I mean, the love of Christ sets us free, right? Like breaks the bonds of oppression and sets the prisoner free. And and what imprisons us more spiritually than shame? Like thank you so much for the beauty of the way that you've described that, for the holistic way that you've your journey. And I know that, as you kind of said, like we're really just scratching the surface of everything that there is to talk about. We're also just scratching the surface of this community getting to know you and getting to know you as well, Brad. Both of you have really come into the community when we haven't been gathering in the usual ways, and I'm so excited for St. George's to get to know both of you, hopefully as we see the returning to some parts of normalcy this fall. But I thought that we might just end on a bit of a lighter note and ask each of you to share a couple of things, like maybe 3 things that you want St. George's to know about you. So why don't you go first, Brad?
Why don't I go first? Let me grab my little list here. Okay. So a couple fun things about, a couple things about me that you might not know. The first thing is I love to cook. It's a thing that I love to do. I've learned that for a long time in my life, I didn't really have a hobby because my music was my profession and my education. So I had a hard time defining what was career and profession and what was hobby. So I decided that I really wanted to find something that I loved to do that was something apart from what I did, at work or in school. So it became something for me that was, I could just take my mind off of all of and it's hard to get your mind off of music. We've all had, what do you call those, earworms? But imagine doing music constantly all day. It gets a lot. So you want something to just take you out of that. And cooking has been that for me, especially since I moved to Hamilton. I have a beautiful big kitchen. And it's really been wonderful cooking with my roommate, a lot of vegetarian and vegan things as well. But then also we have a nice grill in the back. So I've been doing some summer meat as well. So it's been a lovely time of kind of honing into a hobby. It's been maybe 5 years since I've seriously done some cooking. And this last year has been substantial of new recipes and things. And then second one is someone very important to me in my life growing up was my grandfather, who was the person who introduced me to music. I thought that's something that maybe nobody knew about, but my grandfather was from London, England, and he and my grandmother, Iris, who is on our Prayers of the People list every week, which is I very much appreciate. They came over on a boat. It took 10 days on a ship across the Atlantic to get here from England, and settled in Flamborough and raised a family. And one of the first pieces of furniture they bought was an orange piano, bright orange piano. In fact, I don't have it right now, but I still have the stool from that piano. And that was the first piano that I ever played. And I have fond memories of learning and it was on his lap, so that, I have fond memories tied to family and history and that old piano. And so whenever I make music, I can't help but think of him.
Nice.
I was able to record a little bit of music with him before he died. He died of cancer, and I took him into my high school when I was in high school at the time, and we recorded a few songs together. And he told my grandmother the best experience of his life. So I was happy to give him that. Mm. I know that's an emotional one. And then the third one, I was going to say I have a brother named Garrett, but we'll leave that for another time because I want to save my third one for the very end.
Okay. All right, Lorenzo, then you get to do.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess folks wouldn't know about my love of bonsais. I have been working on bonsais since the age of 12.
Nice.
And so I've had many, some that lived to be 30 some odd years of age. And I've got a whole new group of bonsais now that I'm working on and I really enjoy it. It's something that I guess, able to see something grow and change it and direct it and making, a large tree miniature and seeing the beauty of the tree trunk and the shape of the tree. So, and I guess it helped watching Karate Kid. I think I watched that and I was like, oh yes, you could see the Karate Kid, working on the little bonsais and so forth.
That's what got my son into bonsais too. And
yeah, well, there you go.
His bonsai over the summer, so there you go.
Enjoy that still. So, and I'm really thankful that where I'm living now, that there's a large terrace and I can have a section there with all of my bonsais and I can work there.
Nice.
So another thing is I've done a lot of work in art, painting. I've used multiple different venues, watercolor and ink, acrylic. I used to do a lot of landscapes. Now I do portraits and really enjoying doing portraits and been commissioned to do a few. And so if you know anybody that needs their portrait done.
Yes, okay.
But that's something I've done since I was quite young. My mother was very artistic and she'd sit and she'd draw horses. I can never draw a horse. I can't draw animals. I don't know why. I could draw a person, but I can't draw an animal. And the third thing that people would know is that I've been in several movies.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And so I have a couple of friends who are producers and directors, and they've used me in their movies. One just recently won first prize in Canada for the best short horror film.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is very cool.
And I don't like horror movies.
I don't either. I mean, I'd like to see you in this movie, but horror is not my genre.
So, doing that. And so I'm working on a documentary right now where there's 3 of us, kind of like this, like a panel. And we're discussing art and how it influenced serial killers. Ooh, gruesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely totally out of my element, but
it's like my cooking. It's your hobby.
Yeah.
You guys both have some pretty good little fun facts. Brad, are you going to share your third one, or
yes,
do you want to be at the very end?
The very, very end.
Okay. Is there also going to be some music at the very, very end?
That might be the third one.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I want to say a big thank you to my guest tonight, Deacon Lorenzo Cromwell, and my co-host, Brad Barnham. Dessert and Dish is going on a little hiatus right now for the summer. That's not to say that we aren't going to have more Dessert and Dish this summer, but you're going to have to stay tuned to see what we have up our sleeve in a few weeks or in a month or so. We will make sure that we get some more conversations and dessert onto the table. Thank you all for joining us tonight and for being part of how together we get to eat and talk and participate in the sweetness of life.
My third is that I like to make little theme songs. Thank you for being here with us. We've had a nice time. We've had a nice time. It's Dessert and Dish with my friends Lorenzo and Martha, the tonic. Woo! Thank you for being here with us.
Wow.
Bravo. That's wonderful.
That was awesome, Brad. Okay, you're hired.
Oh, good. Rehired. Good. Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. That was a wonderful conversation, Lorenzo and Martha.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.